Hi, everybody, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast. Today, one more time, we are here to share an amazing Camino story and a story that, we had many writers, we have authors of the Camino, some write guidebooks, some write novels, some others fiction. But today is the first time that we have an author that decided to go for the little ones and wrote a book for kids, a book for the Camino for kids. And because, sometimes we are seeing, and it's something that is growing a lot of families, and it's not just in the summer but even families that decided, during the year to take that gap year or to go homeschooling and come to Spain and discover the Camino. So let me introduce you to our guest today. Good morning, Esther. How are you doing? Thank you so much for being with us.
I'm so happy to be here, Jose. This is a great privilege, and I'm so glad that you've noted up front that this is a book for kids. But I will also say it is also a book that adults are loving too.
I have to say this is the next Harry Potter. And like I think,
Oh,
I
I love
can
that.
see the future of this of our friend Jamie Bacon going all over the world, all over the different caminos, because but we will talk about that later on. I'm like, first of all, thank you. I don't know when was it the first time and this is the fun thing, and I repeat myself a ton of times, but thanks to the pandemic, I discovered so many great people on the Camino, so many great things about the Camino. And I think that your book is one of those that I discovered on Facebook. But it's funny because you are not on Facebook.
That's right.
As you can see, under her name, there is only the Instagram because there's no Facebook. But you can go to the website and we will put all the information on the notes of the podcast. But before we go into business, remember, we want you to subscribe and like in any of the platforms we are. We are in YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all of them, And it's not about being big, it's about getting and reaching more people because we truly believe that this is stories from people from the Camino. That's what the Camino is all about. And if we can, encourage and help anyone to go on walk, I'm like, why not? No.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful
So
mission to introduce the Camino to people.
that's my thing. That's what when we started this whole thing. It's almost been 6 years, and it's like El Camino people. It seems so so normal, so common, and at the end, it is what it is at the Camino about. You remember the albergues, you remember places, but the thing that is stuck, here is the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have
So
friends still from my first Camino.
We always start with the 1 minute questionnaire. We have this amazing list here, and it's in English and in Spanish. And you are trying to get in bilingual, so I'll try in Spanish, or maybe in a couple
Oh,
of
no,
months we can.
no,
Maybe
no.
in a couple of months we can try to do the interview in Spanish. But for now, we'll stay with the English. So remember, whatever comes to your mind is just a starter. Just don't think and throw it out. Are you ready?
Okay.
Your first Camino.
My first Camino was in 2008, and it was the Camino Frances.
How many
And
Caminos?
I've done 3 Caminos so far, and I've been to Santiago about 6 times.
One city.
Oh, I think it's Santiago de Compostela
One
with that
meal.
fabulous one meal, pulpo
One
in Melidi.
one song.
One song. Oh, I made up a song that we sang over and over in new verses every day.
One color.
One color, huh? I think gold. We went in autumn, so it was the gold of the fields.
A smell.
Smell. The fresh air in the morning. Yeah.
The omelette with or without onions.
Oh, I like without onions, and I don't remember where I had an omelet.
Let's finish the interview. No onions. You're a Galician. Galicians always with no onions. The
Is
rest of
that
Spain,
right?
yeah. Usually when we fight about the tortilla de patatas, the Spanish omelette, it's always Galicians the one that they like it a little more fried and without onions. And usually the rest of Spain we are the onion power and more fresh, more eggy. So
Okay.
usually this is my tricky question. This is where I finish the interview. I go home and
Make yourself a
so
tortilla. Huh?
so tell me, sir, one of the things that surprised me the most is how did people find out about the Camino de Santiago? I live here and I still have friends that if I ask them about the story of St. James or where the Camino goes, where the Camino starts, or any little information, facts about the Camino, they have no idea. So how and when did you find out about the Camino de Santiago?
I think the very first time was when somebody sent me a New York Times article about the Camino. It's like a two-page article that showed the cathedral, and I read about it. And this person said, "Let's do this sometime." We never did do it, and she still hasn't done it. But that was my first time. And then a colleague walked in from California, walked the Camino, and her stories were pretty persuasive, and it seemed like such a lark to do it that I said, "Okay, let's do it sometime."
I guess most of us, when we finish the Camino, we became that kind of person that is surrounded by people and you're just chatting and chatting about your Camino until people get bored and pissed with you. And there's two options: or you go and walk the Camino, or you just run away from that person.
Well,
So
I
at the
was
time, you didn't
better.
know anything. You haven't read any books, haven't watched the movie The Way or anything like that.
Oh, I have now, yes. But the way came out after my
After,
first Camino. I
okay.
think in 2011, and my first Camino was '08. But I did do reading. I read James Michener, who loved Spain,
Hmm.
and what this wonderful book, Iberia. And I did some online stuff. But back in 2008,
There
the
wasn't that
resources
many.
were
Yeah.
not that broad or
Hmm.
extensive. But I did try to read, and I also tried to get my body into shape to carry a pack and all that. But yes, and there's some old books from the 50s. A guy named William Starkey wrote a fabulous book about, and you can hardly get them. Libraries
Hmm.
throw them away. They don't know what value these books have. But I read some of those.
Interesting. And what happened? You were talking about how, and I think this happens to everyone, that suddenly things happen in life that you don't decide to do the Camino. Suddenly you get the call. So what happened between the moment that you discovered the Camino, talking with your friend, till the moment that you decided, right now is the time to go?
I can hardly remember. Um, I was working. I was trying to market an educational product,
Okay.
and it wasn't going well. and and the other person that I was walking with had that time available. I said, "Okay, out of here. I'll work on marketing my educational product some other time." And I just said, I said, "I don't know why I'm going, but I'm going." And that is what I think the call is. Like, you don't really have any idea what you're quite getting into, but you say, "Okay, it's
But
time."
those are the real calls now. If the call tells you what to do, I'm like,
That's good. That's a good point. I agree.
that kind of call, no? When you go into a journey, into an adventure, into the plot, and one of the things, the books that I love the most about the Camino is The Alchemist, and it's not about the Camino. One of the things I love,
Right.
I think Paul Coelho got messed up, and the book Pilgrim was supposed to be The Alchemist, and The Alchemist was supposed to be The Pilgrim, and I like them both. But for me, The Alchemist is one of the most amazing books in the world. That, like The Little Prince, is one of those books that
Yes,
it's about the journey. It's about the discovering. I'm like, you don't know what you're getting into. And like, Jamie Bacon, when he was into the Camino, he didn't know what he was getting into.
that's right. That's right. That's
So
right.
then you do a little research. That was the time. So you are pre the way. And like, there is an after and a
Right.
before the big movie. And what would people, one of the things that a lot of people, what were your friends and family telling you? I'm like, you're suddenly going to Spain and walk more than 500 miles.
Well, people are because most people don't in the States at that time did not even have a clue what it was, not much more of a clue than I did. And well, my daughter and son-in-law were supportive. I had two grandchildren, and I mean, I still do. But I wanted to. Um, I like this idea of encouraging kids to do things that get them to expand their minds, their experience. And so I went on it for my own expansion, but very quickly, as I was walking along, I said, this is an extraordinary opportunity to get kids to open up their minds and be more interested in other countries and so on. So I they were fine with it. They know I do some odd things. Yeah. So,
And what for you was the first time, traveling like in such a long trip, or were you used to travel previously to that, or?
well, I grew up with a lot of travel, but I'd never done a walk. I mean, I did some hiking as a kid, as a high
Mhm.
school. person. But walking 500 miles, it
And no
was
long distance hikes.
inconceivable,
Just
inconceivable. But other people did it, so uh,
why not?
why not? Yeah.
So after some planning and everything, you get and suddenly you are with your friend and you arrive into Spain or you travel to France or
Actually, we traveled to France first, which was a good thing because we were staying with French people who could make reservations at that one um, albergue when you leave Saint Jean Pied de Port and you go
Mhm.
up the hill and you at that albergue Orison, which is the only
Oh, the
one,
sun. Oh
yeah,
my gosh. I
on
never
that
been there,
mountain.
but it's one of the things that because for me, I'm a hiker, I'm a runner. So yes, and I love Saint John so much that I love to spend the night in Saint John every time.
Well, we spent the night there, but then the next night, you're just breaking in and you're just getting used to walking.
That's such a great
And
idea.
Orison was a fabulous, so our French friends made us a reservation there, and we couldn't even get into the albergue, but they gave us a tent out back, and
Wow.
that was kind of the beginning of the whole.
Do you know that
Okay,
right now there is a new hotel, well, a new albergue that they open a little bit farther up on Horizon. So there's, more options for people to stay in the
uh,
middle and break that journey into 2 days.
well, that's a good thing, especially for new people who have no idea what they're.
Even yes, I will say, if you have the time, take it easy. A while ago, I discovered this group in on Facebook that is the slow
Oh,
walkers.
what a good turn, good idea.
I'm like walking just 10K every day. What a dream.
Right, right, yeah.
So how was the arrival here? I'm like, how was the getting into? A lot of people you come from the traveling, you're a tourist, and suddenly here you are in undiscovered city, surrounded by undiscovered people that they are gonna be doing the same thing that you're gonna be doing, but nobody knows what they're looking for and what to expect.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing that I realized right off the bat was how ignorant I was of Spain. And even where the Pyrenees, we have a lot of geographical ignorance, even if we've traveled. And I really realized that. And I loved having a guidebook. I used the Brearley guidebook, which
Mhm.
the maps were so wonderful. They really described everything that you needed to know. And I thought, this is the biggest gift to a pilgrim, an American pilgrim or an English speaking pilgrim that you could have. So I used that faithfully, and I
Mhm.
still have my guidebook. Um, so right off the bat, things like almost every meal you get French fries, and all those things. But
And we don't call them French fries.
I know you don't. I know, but to an American,
Not even the French call them French fries, but
I,
yeah.
I know, I know. But I did enjoy the meals. I did enjoy the food. The 3-course meals. Your first course, second course, third. That doesn't exist in the U.S. And
No.
I loved that. I loved that experience and all the variety that was available. And then going from one kind of albergue to the next, you never knew what you're going to get, whether it would be a big modern building or whether it would be a little old decrepit place where you have to walk up a narrow staircase and crowd into a room with 20 other people. um, but that's such a big part of the adventure, being
So
being in the
how
albergues.
was the first day? Because a lot of people when they come, such a long journey, and I always say, take the first day one step at a time. In your case, you did them extremely great. Stopping all this on because it takes a while from the flight, from everything, also the excitement. A lot of people, on the way up to Horizon, they start, running, and you're like, you're not gonna make it.
Not gonna make it at all. I thought it was very strenuous. I couldn't believe that those mountains just kept going up. No down. Just up, up, up,
And
up,
then they
up.
go down. That is probably sometimes it's even worse.
That's right. The next day, it's all downhill, and your knees are suffering, and you're sliding on the wet leaves, and uh, yeah. But so that first day was hard. Well, the first week really
Hmm.
is very tiring, and you fall into bed, and I always had trouble sleeping, so I was grateful to have some sleeping pills along so that I could sleep through all the noise of the in
I
the
guess that's what
albergue.
they say. No, the first week is the week that you do the Camino with your body, and it gets that time to get used to. But was what you expected? or was something
No,
different?
I did not know what to expect.
Okay.
I just was. People can describe it, and that doesn't give you the feel at all. Um, uh, the pain of the blisters. I had trouble with my boots. The pain of the blisters, the not knowing where you're going, the missing the arrows. Everybody misses some arrows sometimes, I assume. Um, Getting into the cities where the diesel smell, from the trucks is so offensive after you've had the time in the fields with the cows, being afraid of the cows. Uh,
So
there's
was that
so
your first time in Spain, or have you been before in Spain?
No, that was my first time in
First
Spain.
time.
First time in Spain, and I was very impressed. I just thought it was a wonderful country.
And one of the things, did you plan your stages? Were you just walking day by day, and whatever you finish the day, finish your day?
Well, that Brierley guidebook, it has pretty demanding stages. We ended up like doing half stages sometimes because it's like I'm too tired to go on. And then you run into a nice albergue or your friends are stopping there or something. So I did not push.
And
Had
that's,
to
I think, that's really important. Even for me as a Spaniard, some of the cities that I went through, I haven't never visited, like Burgos,
Yes,
or Leon. I never been there, so taking it easy so you can spend a whole day or just a whole afternoon in places like
absolutely.
this should be mandatory.
Absolutely. And that's another thing about the guidebooks. They'll often kind of tip you off as to what the main uh, features of the city are. And yes, I think it's really important to spend time in those cities.
I agree
There's,
with you.
there's
Just
so much
food.
Spanish history there.
Also
Pamplona,
coming
yeah.
all the way from the States, that that's you hit on the here, Pamplona. Everybody goes with the rush and they just run through Pamplona.
No, I wanted to look around.
Okay.
And
Because not many pilgrims, they just go for a couple of tapas, close to the albergue. You're in the old town. And I always tell
right,
everyone, for everyone listening, remember, I do tours and whatever you want in Pamplona. I always love to show my town and go tapas with the pilgrims, because there's no better way to discover the town than with a local.
absolutely. I wish I'd known you then.
Next time, you will have to come back again.
Next time. Yeah.
So you go into your Camino, you are with your friend, and a lot of people, when we talk about the Camino, they talk about, we have all these Facebook gurus of the Camino say that, oh, the Camino, you have to go along with your backpack, but you went with your friend. How is doing the Camino with a friend?
It was very interesting. I found this is something I haven't even shared with her very much. I found myself feeling very angry with her. And I have
Okay.
to tell you quite honestly, I to this day I haven't been able to identify the source of my anger because she was just doing her lot, she was doing her thing and I was doing mine. And I I just had a lot of resentment. So um, it was a surprise and it was a disappointment because here I was with sort of negative emotions, and they just showed up. Um, and I wanted to walk alone, and I did walk alone a fair amount of the time, or with other people that I met. That's the beauty, when you do go with a flexible friend, you can say, I'm going by myself this morning. I wanted silence, or I want whatever, and then you meet up at the end of the day, and you have that security of knowing there's somebody there.
And I agree, that's the beauty. Sometimes you don't even need to talk. I'm like, you just know that the other one needs to go ahead. And even with
Right.
your Camino family that you discover in your Camino, I met my Camino family probably by the second day.
Yeah.
But the fourth day we are a bunch, and we know each other. One will go ahead, the other one will go. We met for breakfast or at the end of the day. So you will say that there's no difference. Walking with a friend just gives you like someone to spend the time when you arrive to the town, or
Right.
that safety.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
We'll have to ask her about how was walking the Camino with you.
Yeah. Yes. Don't ask her. No.
And as you get going to the Camino, and how was the feeling of the Camino? Like, you pass the you start getting into the meseta, you finally get into that Camino mood. How was the change in you?
I just found myself singing a lot, making up
Me
songs,
too.
singing every song I knew because, when you sing, you have sort of a rhythm that
Yeah.
keeps you walking. I thought it was so beautiful. It was this fall, so it was golden, and the soil. The farmers were turning over the soil, so the soil was dark. The color palette was just extraordinary. And I took so many pictures. It's just a field, but when I was walking through it, it was wonderful. Plus, that whole experience of walking along, and then you see a little hermitage or a little tiny church or a little tiny structure, and you think, my gosh, this is 1,000 years here,
Mhm.
right here. And in the States, we don't have things that are that
Yeah.
old, very many places. So it was a deep appreciation and thinking, I need to know a whole lot more about this because this is a part of the world that I hardly paid any attention to in my studies, you know.
Mhm.
So
And what about the process of the backpack, your blisters? Was that any? Were you ready for what the Camino was throwing at you, or?
no, I was not. I was not. I thought I had prepared with good boots, expensive boots, and when my feet started hurting and I developed a corn and all these
Ooh.
silly things, and you stop and you uh, use a match to sanitize a little needle, then you push the needle through your blister. Have you done that?
Many times I'm a backpacker, so
Yeah.
plus I'm a runner, so I lose an average of 15 nails a year. Plus blisters is normal for me,
Oh my
even
goodness.
with
Oh my
whatever.
goodness. It's so painful though. Um, and finding for a woman, finding places to use the bathroom is like this is a whole other thing that you really aren't prepared for.
Mhm.
There's long stretches where there are very few bushes, and and everybody else has used them already before you.
Yes.
So it's really they need to teach more etiquette around that,
Yeah,
and they
that's
are.
one of the things that we're planning. Camino etiquette. There's little things that they're normal, but there's a little etiquette that it needs to be there for sure. And
Absolutely, absolutely.
so, what was your daughter, at home when I guess you will be talking to her and her pictures and stuff. What was she saying about your Camino?
Basically cheering me on, until you've done this, even when you've read books, until you've done this experience, you really don't know how you're going to respond.
Mhm.
Um, as I said, I was pretty early on in the Camino. I said, I think I need to write about this for my grandchildren. And I had in mind, they were young, a picture book and a few words. It wasn't a
Mhm.
novel at all that I had in mind. Um, so, and in those days, we didn't have smartphones.
Mhm.
They had a big, often in the albergue, they had one big computer. You put a euro in and you get 20 minutes of time. And then there's people lined up.
The old internet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was tricky. There were often times where, one didn't get to send an email home
Mhm.
saying where you were. Um, and that's just the way it was back in those days.
And one thing also surprised me a lot about the Camino is the people that journal along the Camino. For me, I hate writing. The only time I wrote in the Camino, I got interviewed by the most bizarre, story that ever happened to me in the Camino. But were you journaling since day one in the Camino, thinking about writing a book, or was that something mostly for yourself?
I did journal. I did journal. I made notes.
Okay.
And I wrote in my guidebook where I was each night, so I can go back and check. Um, but I thought I would journal. I thought I would blog because I had a little blog at that time. Did I do it?
It
Very
was the
little.
old blog days.
Yeah, very very little that did I do. Um, and I don't think I've ever gone back and read it even. You know.
So, did during this Camino the idea of the book, when was it born, or when did the idea of writing a novel for kids or something for kids came out?
Well, that was very early on because
Okay.
again, I had these grandchildren, and I thought this is too unusual an experience to not record it in some way for them and inspire them. Well, um, I talked with another woman who also had children about doing a book together. We kind of talked about it, but you know what? Nothing ever came of it. And then when I first, shall I hold up the book?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, oops, here we are. Yeah. It's called Walk, Jamie Bacon's Secret Mission on the Camino de Santiago. Um, and when I first started, I thought it was for a 4 and a 6 year old. Well, I didn't finish it until they were, 16 and 18. So all along, I had to keep changing who I thought my audience was, the vocabulary, and then, of course, the content
Mhm.
evolved as I learned more on different caminos that I went
Yeah,
on.
I guess your Camino was one Camino, and as we will keep talking, the book was another full Camino, no?
That's right. And I went back twice more because when you see a place like in Pamplona, you see that statue with the bulls and so on.
Mhm.
I had to go back and look at it really closely again, and take pictures. And um, in the book, the little boy jumps on top of the statue.
You know, they were trying to block the statue because everybody was jumping in, but they
Oh, were
decided
they?
not to. Yeah, they tried. They want to put like buses and
Uh-huh,
around, but
uh-huh.
they decided finally not to because
Okay,
it
because
is beautiful like it is.
it is beautiful like it is, and I do confess I jumped up on it,
We
which was
won't say anything.
I know.
So
I did several things like that, that I should not have done.
and that's also part of the Camino.
That
Like
is
having a
part of it,
couple beers here and there. I'm like, there's no pain in that one.
right.
So as you get going, and you are on your first Camino, and you get closer to Santiago, how was the feeling?
Oh my, lots of anticipation. It always seemed farther away. You think you're
Hmm.
there almost. Oh no, you're not even. No, you're just entering Galicia. You know, um, and but as we drew closer, what I felt was really. Uh, I was very unhappy actually with, for example, the Monte de Gozo.
Monte do Gozo.
It was so dirty, and so crowded with people. And I thought, no, 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 this is not this glorious experience where you first see the cathedral from a mountaintop. No, it wasn't that, and I was disappointed. Walking that last part was disappointing, except when you get to the plaza and
And
you
you cross.
turn and you look and you say, "Oh my gosh, this is the most amazing view of any building I think I've ever seen." And I've seen
It
the
is.
Taj Mahal and other places, but I swear that was just astonishing and so uplifting. Oh,
It
crying,
is. Yeah, it is incredible. Sometimes I'm from being a computer guy. I always talk about the Camino de Santiago in ways of UX design, user interface design. But as we get into the book, and I know that you have a rough time with the plot, the Camino de Santiago is itself a plot. I'm like, you start building the story, then you have the time to go through whatever you have to, and suddenly at the end, it can be super crappy because, as you say, when you get over there, it is sometimes for the people that walk the whole Frances, it's not a really enjoyable experience when you get from Sarria and you start seeing a lot of people, the
right,
places. I'm
right.
sorry, but the towns are not beautiful. The landscape, it is beautiful, but the towns, they are nothing
Yes,
compared to prior.
that's right.
But suddenly when you arrive into Santiago and you start going down and you see the little tip of the cathedral, but you don't know what is coming.
You don't. It's very exciting.
And then you go under the cross, the darkness, the everything, to go into the light, and suddenly you turn around and you're like, wow.
Wow. And then you go inside, and I know it's been renovated because I was there in 2019, and
Hmm.
uh, when I first went, it was all dark.
Yeah,
The
for me it was the
moss
same. The
and the
scaffolding, everything was falling down super. Yeah.
right, but still it was gorgeous. And
Mhm.
now it's gleaming. It's
Some
so
people don't like the renovations. Some people, they are complaining about the cleaning of the cathedral and everything. I'm like, for me, it is a mix. I'm like, but the beauty of something like it was meant to be. I'm like, the guy that
yes.
designed that, that's how he envisioned the whole cathedral. So it's
That's
just,
right. That's right. And then when you enter, And now I know they're closing off certain places, so you can't see the Portico of Glory as
Now
well.
it's open.
Is it?
I
Okay.
was there last summer, and oh my, incredible! It's one of those things that you're like,
It,
wow.
it is just wow. And I mean, you can spend months
Mhm.
just learning about the different things in that cathedral. It's so rich. It's so, and then
Have
when
you
you
go to
go,
the roof?
I've been up to a high level, not terribly high, but
Okay.
to
Because now
one of
there's a visit that you can do also from the rooftop, and also one of those things that will be mandatory for any pilgrim.
yeah,
Beautiful, beautiful to do.
right. And then when you walk behind St. James,
Mhm.
and you hug him, oh, it's just being part of that long history, that's just thrilling. And you feel blessed. You feel so
And that's the
fortunate.
thing, a lot of people they go and as you were saying, Diego the priest is saying in your book, like, is it really St. James there? Is it not? Does it matter?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Uh, there's clearly something um, kind of mystical about that whole thing. Whatever mystical may mean, there is something unusual about it um, that just makes you say, "Wow, I'm so glad
And
I
that's probably
thought."
the biggest end for a book that can never be finished. The biggest plot ever. I'm like, we will never know if it's St. James there. There's been studies or whatever, but at the end,
Who knows?
who knows?
Who knows?
So you arrived to Santiago. Were you one of those person that decided, I'm like, the last 100 were a little tricky, so I'm gonna keep walking to Fisterra Musia, or you finished your first Camino in Santiago?
I finished in Santiago, but I took the bus.
Okay,
I took the
perfect.
bus to. I was tired. I'm trying to remember where because I've done a number of where that first albergue was. Santiago, the old city, which is what
Hmm.
you mostly stay in,
And
is
outside in San Martin Pinario, the one of the Seminario Menor, that's the usual, the big one.
yeah, yeah. Um, but next time I go, I'd like to see more of the more modern city also. Um,
The thing, like a lot of people they don't remember, but Santiago is quite a small town. And like
yes, it is.
this is just the old town and the big city with the college, and it's mostly a college town plus pilgrims.
Right, right. And you can imagine what it was during the pandemic with no pilgrims.
Well, I can tell you, I have a couple of friends that live there, but it's same as Pamplona here. No running of the bulls, no pilgrims. It's been quite a couple of interesting years.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, those years gave me time to finish the book and get it out. And I was so grateful because I could just close my door where I was renting and just
just right.
finish working on this project.
And you finish your Camino, and one of the things that we always talk with a lot of pilgrims is that the pilgrim's blue. We go back home, and everybody suddenly is that moment when you're like, "What do I do with my life now?"
Yes. Well, as I shared with you earlier, what I discovered was such a degree of freedom in not owning possessions, in not having a home, in simply being open to whatever shows up in my life. That
Hmm.
was so exciting and rewarding to me that I started the process of selling the home I was in and getting rid of my furniture and most of many of my possessions and books, all that. I just started getting rid of it, and I decided to live in a much more what I'm going to call responsive way, responsive
Hmm.
to what shows up, rather than a required way, which I could do because I
Hmm.
was retired. You know,
Yeah.
and if you have a family and children that you're needing to get to school, you can't live that way. But there are times in life when you can, and I decided to do that, and I haven't regretted it at all. Um,
So downsizing now that the whole world is going into this new trend of nomadic life. Marie Kondo is the top worldwide and everybody's going into, you probably being a teacher, you will have like a ton of books, sort of things, and suddenly here you are downsizing into a pilgrim life.
Yes. A pilgrim of a slightly different nature, but still a pilgrim. It's a wonderful concept to be a pilgrim in your life.
That's one of the things that I always discuss, and sometimes, what is a pilgrim?
What is a
What is a
pilgrim?
pilgrimage?
And what is a pilgrimage? Well, a pilgrimage is a purposeful journey in the unknown to something that you think is there that will be gratifying. You know, uh,
I love it. I think I'm gonna make a t-shirt for that one because that's. But I'm like, for many people, life is a pilgrimage.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
live the life that.
that's right. And pilgrimage always involves taking the next step, whatever it is. You
Mhm,
know, you your job is to take the next step, even if something dire happened. Take the
mhm,
next step. So that's and what is a pilgrim? I would say a pilgrim is someone who is open to the direction or the call of adventure or of deepening one's deepening one's experience of spirituality or
mhm.
deepening one's experience of oneself. A pilgrimage is an adventure into oneself often.
Because yeah, as you were saying, I think the big thing when a lot of people they we discuss about what is the difference between a long distance hike like the PCT or any of the trails worldwide. In the States, you have a lot of trails a long distance that they are much more challenging than the Camino. Like the PCT is 6 months walking, or
Right.
but what is the difference with the Camino? And I think when you go to the PCT, you go into that journey, but mostly it's totally different meaning. And when you go into the Camino, it's as you were saying, more open to, and as we know from your experience and for everyone that walks, sometimes the Camino has something waiting for you that you don't want. And that's when you have to decide embrace it or to go home, no?
That's right. That's right. You embrace it or you go home.
So then you go home, your first Camino. When was the feeling of I need to keep walking again came out?
Well, it was really in connection with this book project
Mhm.
because it took a lot of different forms, this project.
So how was the book born? Was there Jamie there or wasn't?
No, but you know what? I'm a woman and I'm an older woman, and I've been asked like, how was it to write from the point of view of a young boy? And I was a teacher, and I was a teacher in an urban setting in the East Coast of the U.S.
Mhm.
And they always say that the children that have the most trouble reading are boys, or often. Boys don't read as early as girls do.
Yeah,
Often they are not interested in reading and so on.
yeah, we
So
are
I
different.
said, you know what? If I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a book which, cross my fingers, will interest boys and be accurately a reflection of at least part of the way they think.
Mhm.
So I did have three brothers. I had three brothers, although I didn't spend a lot of time with them, and I have one grandson. So I took bits and pieces maybe of what I saw and observed in them, and then I also believe that we all have male and female in us, and
Mhm.
I thought I have a little boy in me, and I'm just
Let
gonna
it go. Let it
let,
get out
let
and
it
play.
let him get out and play. Let him be angry. Let him be mean. Let him push people around. Whatever it is, let it happen. And the feedback I've gotten is that at least from some people is that it's a fairly accurate picture of a young boy.
Yes. Yeah, I will
Yeah,
see
you think
myself
so?
being Jimmy Bacon. Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, I love it.
So when was Jimmy born? I'm like, was there a moment that he was born, or was he part of the book since the beginning? The beginning you were saying that you thought about the book about a 4 or 6 years old. Now it's kind of like a novel for like 12 ish,
Yeah,
and like can be read by anyone, as we said, if you're into books. But a boy 5 6 years old, boy 7 years old is not gonna read that. A girl may read it, but we will go about and play and throw stones. But when was the Jimmy concept?
Well, it's interesting that you're almost pronouncing it Jimmy, because originally
Oh,
he was Jimmy, and then
now it's
somebody
Jamie.
now it's Jamie. Yes, yes. Um, because someone told me, a British friend said, "Jimmy, we don't use the word
Jimmy.
Jimmy, we use Jamie." So I
Yeah.
changed it to Jamie, and who knows? Um, when was he born? I'm not sure when he was born.
Okay.
Um, he did evolve. I originally was going to do a girl. I was going to do the sister Lily was going to be much more developed than she was. But then
Hmm.
you know what? It gets the Camino gets very, very, very long if you do that. And I had to cut out an awful lot. So I reduced reduced it a good deal, and I had some readers and some editors along the way that really helped me uh, put in more emotion, put in more adventure because he has a lot of adventures. Almost every chapter is a is a new experience for him, as it is on the Camino. Every
Hmm.
day is a new
Every day is a
experience.
new adventure, a new
Yeah,
chapter, and a new journey into the unknown.
yeah, yeah. Totally, totally. Yeah.
So, what like if why Jamie goes into the Camino? What was his purpose? And
Well, he doesn't know, and what I wanted to do was create a character who, the thing in a plot is you have to have problems.
Mhm.
And so when he starts, he's resistant. First, he's interested, and then he finds out his dad can't come,
Yeah,
and then he's resistant, and he's belligerent, and he's mean to his sister, and he's nasty to his mother, and I had to have him be that way so that later on he could
he
grow
can
more
grow.
accepting and mature and do that. So um, I can't remember your question. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. So, did can we see something of you and Jimmy on the way he grows into the Camino as your first Camino, or was more of an
Good question. Good question. I think so. I mean, as I told you, I spent a fair amount of time being angry, and he doesn't spend as much time being angry as I did. He he rolls with the punches much more quickly. Um, but you know, his surprise when he rounds the corner and sees something beautiful or sees something unexpected or goes into the cathedral at Burgos or goes into the cathedral at Leon, that's all me, you know.
Mhm.
That's how I felt. There's just when I went into, I don't know whether you saw Atapuerca.
Yeah. I
um,
not during the Camino, but I've been there without the Camino.
Yeah, I mean, when I learned about Atapuerca and that this was a site where the most unusual Neanderthal skull in all of Europe
Mhm.
showed up, I
Yeah.
thought, I had no idea. This is so thrilling. It made me interested in anthropology and um, archaeology, and so there many of his reactions of awe and appreciation are me. Are how I felt. And I just had to pedal it down to being like a kid's level of appreciation. And
Mhm.
that's what I was attempting to do at least. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the journey of the Camino with the book, because as you were saying, it was a whole. It took you 12 years, kind of, to finish the book.
Well, just a second here. Let me show you. Because I wrote out for myself a little bit of, I had the idea. And then what I learned was I didn't know how to write fiction.
Hmm.
And I first wrote the whole thing, and I thought it was ready to go to a publisher as sort of like as a travelogue. And then I read, or I had lunch with a friend who was a screenwriter, and she said, "Tell me the story of your book." So I tell her, and she says, "Esther, are you ready for this bad news?" She says,
Ooh,
"Esther, you don't have a plot." And I said, "What do you mean I don't have a plot? I just
I-
told it to you."
I'm a teacher. writer. I wrote books. There is a plot.
Right. She said, when I first wrote it, she said, no, you have a travelogue, but that character does not develop. You know, he
Mhm.
sees things, but he does not
Yeah.
develop. And so that was a shock, and I almost gave up at that point, because I didn't want to have to rewrite the whole book, but
Mhm.
I had to. And I got a book by someone who talks about screenwriting, and he outlined you need 22 steps. So I sat there and I diligently said, okay, what am I going to do for this thing? You have to raise the ante with each, so that the final
Has to
thing
be.
that they have to face is the worst. And in this case, you know, Lily looks like she's going to die. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
maybe you haven't gotten to that part
No,
yet.
I have gone. I'm a good reader, so I can do a little, diagonal reading. So I read a little, like most of the first, I don't know, like half of the book I read it, and then the next I have like, so I can ask you questions, and
Right,
so I kind
right.
of know, but I want to go jump in because, as I was saying, I'm like, it's one of those books that it really can catch anyone's attention, even for people that is not familiar for the Camino, because it tells you facts about the Camino. It's historical, it's fun, it's as you say, there's a journey, there's a plot, there's things that happen. I'm like, this can be a TV show. There's something new in every little chapter.
Thank you.
There's
And
some.
there's a mystery, like
That's it. It's
there's a
a
secret.
challenge, a mystery, a secret, something to be discovered in a way that you don't know how it's going to discover. And through the eyes of Jamie and the family, it's so nice and easy. And then as you keep going, there is something new. But it's always, what I like is that it's mixed with facts and with knowledge about what you were saying about the Spain. And the characters are so easy to I don't know, Diego on the first, on the plane, when they sit with Diego. That's
Yeah.
one of the questions. How did Diego come into the book?
Good question. Once you sort of plot out something, you have to create characters. And I thought, who could possibly meet this little boy? Not this kid. Who could possibly meet him that would be able to explain things quickly?
Mhm.
Because in the first chapter, you have to like lay it
No, you
all
have to
out.
get it hooked, and that's
Yeah,
the thing. A lot of for me, I'm one of those ADD that if you don't get me on the first book, I'm done. So that
right,
no.
right. And then I thought, sometimes you just get inspiration. You say, I don't know where that idea came from, but this is a priest that's sitting on the airplane with him, and and then he does whatever he does, and he tells the story because that whole background story of St. James and who St. James was had to get in really quickly because
Mhm.
most people are not interested in this religious
No,
thing
most people don't
at all.
even know and they don't care, but it's also really important to know the whole Camino. And a lot of
Right.
pilgrims, they still probably today they don't even know what is the story of St. James.
Yes, exactly. And when I didn't know either, so I had to go find out.
But
Um,
with
uh,
half a page and the little conversation that they have, that's it. You don't need
that's
more.
it.
And that's one of the things when I'm showing Pamplona to pilgrims, one of the things that I remind and a lot of people that works in tourism, they are pilgrims. You cannot give a pilgrim the speech that you
Right.
give someone that is just visiting. I'm like, no, because he's gonna go through one, another. It needs to be really specific, right to the point, something that he will remember forever, and that's it.
That's
And with
it.
the explanation from Diego, that's it.
Yep.
You have the three important things from St. James, what happened, what not, and as we
Right.
were saying, we don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 And of course, when I first wrote it, I wrote much, much, much more, and then I had to cut, cut, cut. Because it's exactly right. You know, it's such a long process. So anyway, I really worked on it for all 12 years. And the other thing I had to do, Jose, it was I had to inform myself about children's literature. I was an
Mhm.
English teacher, but I taught high school, and I was Shakespeare and so on. And I
Yeah, so
really
you
did
the
I did
level,
not I
yeah.
did not load that other level of literature, and I read over 300 books. They're supposed to be the best books in America.
Mhm.
It was an award, the Newbery Award. I read it which started in 1922, and I went back and got all the ones I could. Some of them are missing; libraries don't have them anymore. Of those Newbery Award books, and I just read them to figure out what is high caliber writing, and and I hope I've done that. That was what my target was. I want to write a book that's as good as those, and So I had to learn about children's literature. I had to learn about fiction, how to write fiction rather than a travelogue, and then I had to learn, and this is how to publish. And if you don't find a conventional publisher, and I have to say that um, conventional publishers are not interested in something that's so obscure that most Americans have never heard of it, you know?
Yeah, and
And
that's probably the biggest challenge right now. No, that everything that is needs to be mass produced, mass, and anything that is just for a small niche.
right, forget it. So I had to learn that the hard way, which is heartbreaking, when you don't have an agent that comes, you don't have anybody to publish your book, then you have to figure out how to do the self-publishing, the independent publishing is the term used now.
Mhm.
And that is a trip too. So you have to find a cover artist, you have to find so many
But right now,
people.
probably in the old days, what was much, harder right now with Amazon and things like that. At least you can get the process. I cannot imagine in the, 25 years ago how it was to go self-publish.
I know. Amazon is so easy. And
Um,
and so are the other ones. And with a
yeah,
computer, you
and
can
at least,
end.
anyone that knows how to write and draw a picture, I'm like, that's
That's
it.
right.
You have your book, you
That's
have your
right.
code, you have your, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, and then of course the last thing is always the marketing. How do I learn to market? Yeah. So
and that's probably the trickiest part because for all of us, our little baby or little kid is always the best, and we don't like when people say, "Oh no, that's not good. I don't like it," and that's probably sometimes the tricky part. But one of the things that after such a journey, we know that the Camino. One of the things that we realize when we walk the Camino is that the beginning is when you arrive to Santiago. The real Camino starts there. The journey. How was for you? The moment that you decide, it's time to give the book their own Camino, to publish and to go ahead? When will you said after 12 years, it is ready?
um, that's a really good question. Um, I worked with a friend who was an editor, and I really trusted her judgment. And I asked her to help me cut because I had like 20,000, 30,000 words I had to cut, which is a lot.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and she one time wrote to me and she said something like, what was her? This is a book that deserves some notice. And I decided, you could look at that as and not very much of a compliment. I decided, coming from her, it was actually a great compliment. It
Compliment.
deserves some notice. And pretty much at that point, I said, okay, I'm ready to stop. And then the book was laid out. You have to find somebody who's a book designer that can lay out your. Was laid out for me by a friend, and who also read it, and she caught like errors. That's hard to do, to find the typos and all that. Um, and in the process of working with her, there were places where I said, okay, let's cut that one out. It doesn't move the story forward at all.
Mhm.
It's a very organic. It's like building a building and realizing, oh, that wall isn't quite in the right place. We
Yeah.
need to move it. There's not enough space here or something. So
And probably, I'm thinking the hardest part for books that is written for kids. I'm like, did you give the book to any kids to read? Because probably, getting the feedback from a professional, that's probably easy. But how do you get it to someone that is the actual, user, the one that is going to not buy, but get
right.
the product and give you feedback?
Well, my granddaughter, my grandson is not a reader. My
Yeah.
granddaughter is a big, big, big reader,
Okay.
and I asked her to read it, and she's in that age. She's older, but she was in that age bracket, and she said, I don't understand this, or
Okay.
I don't get that, and she said to me, "Why don't you put in a prologue?" And that was the most brilliant suggestion because I could cut out a whole chapter by putting in a two-page prologue from the character Jamie.
Mhm.
You and I could put the whole. It just saved me so much. I thought that was such a brilliant idea. And so she was the main child reader.
Mhm.
Um, it is hard. Like if you're working on your own and you're not with a company or something, it
Mhm.
is hard to find kids that would be willing to read
Yeah.
it, and have the
And the intelligence, no, the emotional thing to give you feedback where it
Right.
is needed.
Because most people think when they read something, they think it's can't be changed.
Yeah.
They don't understand that you made it, you created it, you can do whatever you want to with it.
Hmm.
And even adult readers,
Yeah.
they'll say, "Oh, I really like this." I said, "So where's it off?" "Oh, it's not off at all." That kind of thing. And so that's it was a big learning to find people who felt they had permission to really say, I don't like that scene.
Also, there's challenge, in my line of work, also with marketing and stuff like that. You present something to a client or website or a design, and they're like, "Oh no, it's beautiful." I'm like, "No, tell me the bad stuff." I'm like, "This
That's
is
right.
just the previous. I wanted to grow, but it is
That's right.
hard."
You know, there is so much value in someone who is willing to do honest critique.
Yeah.
I swear that they are you welcome them so much because you don't know, you
But we
know?
are scared of the positive feedback and so many things that probably right now we've been using feedback as a hammer instead of
Yeah.
a. But I guess right now probably we've been going back. And so Jamie walks the Camino. You walk the biggest Camino. How did the Camino of the book change you? Because I'm like, one thing that started that's probably this been the longest Camino you ever walk. How was the stair that started the Camino with the book that was with the sister that finished the book and finally published it?
Well, you know, I feel like, and this is something. It's interesting. I feel like I met my intention. I didn't know my intention entirely,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I did. And I was talking about how I put in these 22 steps, like this screenwriter suggested. The other thing that I did is I took Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the steps of the hero's journey, if you know Joseph Campbell, um, and I superimposed that on my plot. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like the book, if they know that there's a hero's journey behind the whole structure, they'll see it. Um, so there, I felt like I needed to do. And somebody said this. Okay, somebody said, let me see, because I just kind of wrote it down. The highest use of storytelling is in service to a big idea. Okay, so storytelling is to support a big idea. And I thought once when I said, so what was my big idea? And then you have to get back behind what you were doing. And this is what I came up with. My big idea is that there's nothing more important than educating our children to have open hearts and minds, to be responsible for themselves, and to realize that life is an adventure that they can shape in
Mm-hmm.
some way for themselves. And and so you asked when did I feel what did I feel at the end or whatever. I felt satisfied that in fact I talk about open hearts and minds. I mean I show that, I hope. I I have the kid learn to take responsibility for his choices, and I do feel like he sees life as an adventure that he can shape going forward. So that's kind of so I felt good about it, and I continue to feel good about it. I know there's errors or whatever, or people that don't get it, and that's fine. It's totally fine
I
because
always say that if there is something that pleased everyone, you're doing something wrong.
that's good point. Good point. Those who read it, the people who've written to me, uh, really, I get a lot of feedback that they grew through reading
Mhm.
it, which is what I want. And it's as much for parents really as for kids because
That was my next question. I'm like, if I'm a kid and read this book, probably is one of those books that I'm gonna get some message. But
Mhm.
if I'm a parent of an even older person, or doesn't have to be a parent, and
Right,
just
right.
an adult, what are the differences of reading the book? Because for example, I think there's as we were talking at the beginning, there's little books that they tell you something different every year you learn. I guess the biggest example is the Little Prince. If you read the Little Prince with 10 years, it's going to tell you a story. If
Yes,
you read it now, it tells you a total different story.
right.
Like The Alchemist, it tells you a story every time. So maybe your book is one of those books that you should read every 3, 5 years to get a different message.
Oh, I love you. I love you. Thank you. I think that that's true. And I feel like that's not a tribute to me. It's really a tribute to, I don't know, uh, inspiration this stuff comes from somewhere else. You prepare your mind, you do all that. You do the work of writing it, but it comes from somewhere else.
Mhm.
And I hope I would love, I have friends who've said I've read it 3 times already. Um, so and again, it's not to me. It's 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 maybe it's to St. James. Who knows?
Who knows? I think that your book is, I always say that in the Camino you go with your backpack, as you were saying at the beginning, we'll walk with your backpack. And with your book, we are all walking with Jamie and we get the backpack and we throw things away and you get the little things. So depending on your emotion that year or the time that you read the book, you're going to feel one thing. And that's the Camino in itself. Why so many people go back and walk the Camino Frances again and again? Like, why not try a different one? There's a lot of people that they just want to do the Frances.
Yes, yes. I'm a little bit like that because there's so much richness there. I mean, Burgos, you could spend a year in Burgos. You could spend a year in Leon. Pamplona. Um, there's so much richness there, and on the other ones, which I haven't been on, there is still the beauty, and it's
Mhm.
being a lot more with nature. I think on some of the other ones, you've done it. I don't know. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I did a couple, and that's it. And also, I think also the beauty of stopping in different places. When you read a book, there is always that chapter that captures you for a long
Yes.
time.
Right.
Maybe next time instead of staying in Burgos, you stay in a little village closer by, or
Yes.
you go to
Yes.
Cañón instead of staying in Logroño.
Yes.
And I guess that's the whole feeling of the journey of a well plot, and that Camino Frances, I think, is just the perfect plot.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So are we going to be seeing, as I'm thinking right now, I'm always, when I'm working with entrepreneurs and with business, I'm always thinking on the next step. And there is a famous book here in Spain that we read when we were kids. And there was the book about the brother, and there was the same book about the sister. Have you think about doing anything like that, or put Jimmy in an different Camino, or maybe something like that, or is just this one book and it's going to stay there?
No, I am working on another project, and in that one, I think the main character will be a girl, and it'll
Okay.
be a little bit older girl.
But
Uh,
totally different situation, not the
Totally
same
different.
book.
No, totally. I'm finished with Jamie. I
Okay,
think.
because this one was pretty funny. Was the book will like this will be the brother, and you flip it, and on the side will be the sister, and it was half book. So, and it was one of those books that everyone read in Spain, and also I was thinking, one of the ones that you make your own story, like, oh, Jimmy arrived into Pamplona. If you want him to run with the bulls, go to page 21. If you want him to go to the albergue, go to page 33.
Yes, I've seen that. It is very clever. It is very clever
They were
to
they were huge when I was a kid. Right now, I don't even think they're a thing anymore. I'm like, we have so many literature that is amazing, but
right.
those books were huge for time. So maybe they can be a make your own Camino.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea.
So can you tell
Make
us a
your own.
little bit about the next project, or is all keep it a
I,
secret?
I'll just say it's about one of the greatest minds that ever lived, that we know nothing about,
Okay.
or we know back in the time when he lived, he was a major figure, but
Hmm.
most people had never even heard of him. And it's about Sir Francis Bacon in England.
Wow.
That's what and I have to tell you, I, I have to do 12 years of research for that one, practically. So we'll see. I mean, I have an idea, and I'm very intrigued, very, very intrigued with Bacon, and we'll see what comes up. I don't
We'll
know.
see.
You'll see.
And what about you? What is going to be your next Camino? Your next journey take you?
My next journey is to become knowledgeable about and to spend time in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. I'm going to be going there with a very good friend and maybe living there um, semi permanently. I don't know.
So looking
The thing
looking
about
for
adventure is
for the good weather.
pardon?
Looking for the good weather, the good weather and the relax and
Well, there's good weather, but there's also the very, very hot season, and there's
yeah.
hurricanes, and you know. But it's a very interesting. If you ever have a chance to read anything about it, it's a very interesting piece of
Mhm.
formation, land
The
formation.
culture and everything over there is incredible. The amount of story that is just right there in that area is incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
So no Camino in the future plan?
I don't know. I don't know. It's not. I'm not ruling it out, but I'll wait for the convergence of time
Hmm.
and resources and energy. And when that happens, I'm happy to go back and maybe do it from Portugal or something. Who knows?
Who knows, no? When the Camino calls, that's the thing, the Camino has to call.
That's right. The Camino has to call.
Anyway, sir, thank you so much. I would like to, invite anyone to go. We'll put the link on the website to check. Also, one question: why walk?
Oh, I had a whole different title for a long time. And then, at least in the States here, there's a lot of one-word titles.
Hmm.
And it just came to me, walk. I had one title was Walk, Sweat, and Wonder, like Eat, Pray, Love. And no, 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 it didn't work. But this one, Walk, did. And then, the subtitle carries the mystery, the secret
Hmm.
mission. And but walk is both a noun, you know,
And
or a verb.
and
So it
also with the
works
whole Camino, it has so
right.
much meaning to it that yeah.
Yeah. So I like that, and it's a simple word to remember. You know,
And Jamie, we know that why the name, the whole Saint James, Diago, whatever. But
right?
but why bacon?
Because I'm interested in Sir Francis Bacon.
Okay, I was thinking on breakfast. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I figure, but you know what? So what?
So there's one thing that a lot of people know, that in all the movies from the monsters and Disney, there's always little pieces of the future movies. So maybe
Uh huh.
that was the little piece of your next chapter in the
Yeah.
first book.
Well, yes, and Bacon is sort of inspiration somehow. Sir Francis Bacon.
Hmm.
There's a contemporary person whose name is Francis Bacon, but I'm talking about the one from the 15th, 16th, 17th century. So
Anyway, Esther, thank you so much for spending
thank
some time with
you.
us. And like, I invite anyone, I'm having a great time reading the book. Really, it's one of the things that I tell everyone. I'm like, if I don't like something, I'm just telling. I'm picky, but really, this is one of those books that you're gonna find exciting. It's easy to read, even if has pictures. It's fun. It's a mix of everything that the Camino is. You have a lot of information about what is the Camino, but you have a lot of knowledge about the story of the Camino, and also you have that kind of like interesting novel that lets you walk into another and wanting more and more and more until you reach to Santiago. So I will let you discover what the book is about. The link will be on the notes of the podcast, and you can go visit. Esther doesn't have a Facebook, but she has a website and also the Instagram, House Sitting Nomad. And any questions that you have, we'll love to answer. So, as we always say, Esther, buen camino, ultrella.
Buen camino oltrea. Susea. Okay.